20 years ago, two young men about your age made a shocking discovery. They were wading in the Columbia River near Kennewick, Washington, when one of them saw a strange rock. "Look," he said to his friend, "I found a head." He was joking until he realized that he had reached down and picked up a human skull. The police were called to investigate. A possible homicide was assumed. A painstaking search of the area uncovered 350 bones and bone fragments. And they called in an expert forensic anthropologist, much like our own Mrs. Calandro. The forensics expert determined that the bones came from a man about 40 years old. He stood about 5'7". He weighed about 163 pounds. He was muscular and right-handed. In addition, the forensic anthropologist found a surprise. There was a black object buried in the man's pelvis, forcibly pushed into the pelvis, and they couldn't figure out what it was. They decided on a CT scan, and when they looked at the results, they still weren't sure, but after bringing in some other experts, it was revealed that the black object in this man's pelvis was a portion of a serrated stone spear point. A Stone Age weapon found in a John Doe is unusual, and so they decided to do more tests. A portion of bone, a small portion of the bone, was sent out for carbon dating, and it turned out that the police were looking at one of the coldest of cold cases. Kennewick Man, as he came to be known, was 9,000 years old, plus, or something a little bit more than that. 9,000 years old. His remains were and are one of the most complete skeletons ever found in North America. I've been fascinated by Kennewick Man ever since I learned about his existence. I wonder what his life was like. I wonder if he hunted mastodons and giant sloths on a windswept tundra, much like this. I wonder if he ever encountered saber-toothed cats or dire wolves, among the boulders left by retreating glaciers. And I wonder if he had any idea that paleo diet was going to catch on like it has. I mean, that's crazy. Research can't tell us everything about this man, but it can tell us one thing. He was a survivor. Not only did he survive the spear attack, which left the point in his pelvis, he also had suffered 6 broken ribs from a massive blunt force trauma. Separated the ribs right from the breastbone. He survived that too. He also had 2 dents in his skull, right about here and here, which looked like they came perhaps from a person swinging a club with their right arm. He survived that as well. How can one person, other than perhaps Leonardo DiCaprio in that Revenant movie, how can one person survive all of that and still hunt and gather enough resources to live? The answer is pretty simple. One person couldn't. Kennewick Man must have been part of a group, a band, a tribe. A group of people who relied on each other and cared for each other, cared for their sick, cared for their injured. Recent information that shows that Kennewick Man was ceremonially buried seems to confirm this. It appears that humans have always been social creatures. 5,000 years before the pyramids were built, we were engaged in the difficult work of making community. It's still a vital part of what makes us human. Author Francis Moore Lapp writes, "We humans wither outside of community. It isn't a luxury. It isn't a nice thing. Community is essential to our well-being." Now, I've been fortunate enough to witness many of you in the graduating class of 2016 building community here at Simsbury High School. And it's very hard work. And it often doesn't get recognized, even by the people who are doing it. So I want to mention a couple of quick examples. First, Ryan Taylor. Well, Ryan, where are you? Raise your hand somewhere. There we go. Ryan Taylor is an extraordinary young man, and I've come to really be impressed by his character. Some of you might know soccer is very important to To Ryan, he probably calls it football. But he was injured in his senior year and not able to compete. A lot of people might have dwelled on that, have sort of sunk down in their own misery. But Ryan put together a group of friends and went out and cheered on other Simsbury teams in all different kinds of sports. Clap if you've seen Ryan at one of your events. I asked him why he did this, and he told me that as an athlete, I know how much it means to have people cheering me on in the stands. I like to give others in the crowd that I want at my events. Now, as most of you know, I'm someone with tremendous athletic prowess, and I understand what Ryan is talking about here. I also like an enthusiastic crowd at my own sport ball events. Another example came from the music program here. The choral performances that we have are absolutely unbelievable. And that's not an expression. I suspect Mrs. Thompson of witchcraft. Anyways, the choral performances here are amazing, and I've enjoyed them thoroughly every time that I've gone. But over the course of the years, I've started watching the crowd more and more. Specifically, I've started watching the other members of the music department, the other students in the music program, in the crowd. And it seems to me that after a performance is over, the loudest cheers always seem to come from the other students in the music program. I asked 3 of my seniors about that, and they had some interesting things to say. One of them summed up the reciprocal nature of community when she said that the cheers are what we would want for ourselves, and so we support everyone else. Another student described seeing herself as a fixed point in the crowd, a fixed point that the performers could look to for support when they were performing. And a third student told me simply, nothing makes me happier than seeing the people I love succeed. I could go on. There are tremendous examples of community and making community here at Simsbury High School. But I realize, as much as I wish it were the case, not everyone graduating today found that sense of community here at Simsbury High School. It's difficult. It's very hard. Even in Kennewick Man's time, making community was a risky thing. After all, some of his social encounters involved being stabbed in the pelvis with a spear and clubbed in the head with a club. It's not easy. It's not easy for me. I'm an introvert. I get nervous around social situations. I overthink social situations. I'm one of those people who always seems to get the hallway greeting wrong. You know that hallway greeting? I say hello when the person's really way too far away for them to respond, and then I do that walking thing towards them in silence. I often spend that time staring at my shoelaces, which is difficult because I wear slip-ons. At parties, my wife will find me hidden behind the potted plants or having deep discussions with the house cat. Mr. Whiskers, is it true if you were bigger you would hunt humans? Or is that a lie perpetrated by the canine media? More than I care to admit, I avoid social situations. I'm not proud of it. I'll stay at home, watch Netflix, and, well, just watch Netflix, really. In many ways, the technology that we have today has allowed us to become more and more isolated, more and more self-absorbed. Unless, of course, those cave paintings are sort of a primitive Finsta-post, you know. You could imagine, you know, grog, catch antelope, hashtag tundra goals, hashtag west. But I don't think so. This is the age of the selfie. Many of us, me included, have created a persona that exists only on social media. It's a persona that's as perfect as I think we would like to be. When I look at my Facebook friends, for example, it seems like I'm the only person I know who hasn't completed a marathon, remodeled their home, or just come back from a tremendous vacation. And by the way, for those Facebook friends who are here, just on your pictures of your marathon remodeling and vacation, super like a lot. The problem is that a perfect person, in my experience, is a lonely person. Only when we're less concerned about how we are perceived can we really see other people. Only when we are willing to open up about our own weaknesses can we garner the trust needed to connect with other people. You, the graduating class of 2016, are preparing to leave this community, what is in reality a series of different communities made up of thousands and thousands of big and small social interactions, and you'll be going off on an adventure of your own. And at some point, many of you will feel isolated. I believe that feeling of being alone in a crowded room is universal. Perhaps when that happens, it's a little bit of Kennewick Man and all of our ancestors stirring in our collective unconscious and calling us to engage in the difficult work of building community. When that happens, I hope that you will reach out, that you will strive to connect with others, that you will share what makes you unique, maybe a little odd. When you do this, you'll be traveling a path as old as humanity itself. Sadly, the discovery of Kennewick Man sparked a deep controversy. Native American tribes wanted to bury the remains. The scientific community insisted that the remains were far too important to be buried. There was no community there. Both sides became very defensive, and the case ended up in court for 20 years. It was only just resolved last month. Now, I'm not suggesting that community would have erased all of the tension there, but it certainly wouldn't have hurt. When we listen, when we accept other people as they are, when we enjoy our relationship with other people, bridges are created, doors are opened, and new possibilities take shape. So in conclusion, class of 2016, go out, have a great adventure. Instagram or Finstagram or whatever, the whole thing if you want to. But I would encourage you to make part of that adventure the creation of community. You'll be building a support for yourself, and you'll be making the world a better place. Thank you.